Cool. So when we think about outbounding, like in general, what we think about is there's list building, which is who are the people we want to reach out to. Then there's enrichment, which is what do we know about these people. Then there are signals, which is when do we want to reach out to these people, as in what are things that we're learning about them before we reach out. And then there's actual outbounding, which is like building the sequences, figuring out the copy in the email, etc. So let's break down each of these one by one. List building. My favorite example for list building, and this is funnily enough, I have a friend person, like basically she's a musician. And what she wanted to do, and so this is we were working on this like yesterday. And what she wanted to do is she wanted, she is a new artist, has a thriving Instagram. A chief use case was, how can I reach out to A&R uh, people at different studios? And then I can pitch my music and then they can scout me. Like, how do we
Yeah.
do outbound for that process? Which is like really unique. I mean, this is not necessarily going to make me money, but it's like a great sort of use case to illustrate the capabilities of Clay. I didn't even know what A&R was. So
I was going to ask you, what does that mean?
exactly. So I was trying to figure that out myself, and I'm gonna Google it right now because I as music meaning artist and repertoire. So it's basically the division of a record label that's responsible for discovering and developing new talent. So these are people like if I'm an artist, I want to reach out to and be like, hey, look at my music, like, and then they discover me, and then now I'm signed to a label, and that's how it works. Um, super super cool. But also also not something that art I mean artists have small budgets, like they can't like these people are kids and typically
Mhm.
have side jobs, they can't just like go out and reach it, and often don't have the skills also. So let's see what we did. We said the first step is like sort of list building. So like typically in Clay, let's just start from scratch.
Yeah.
List building is free, so that's really fun. um, but you can start with a sculpture or you can start with a table. So if we start with a sculpture, it's very similar, like find me all the and are representatives of music labels in NYC and um, LA. Focus on those that have less than 1,000 employees, something like that. So it'll ask you like, what are you looking for? Direct contact info. No additional info needed. So Sculpture is a really great tool. It's like a great way to get started. It's not a great way to like then keep going. It's like still pretty basic.
Yeah.
What it can do is it can help you build these lists. So you can see we have 781 people now imported. And the cool thing is like it'll set you up in it with a table, and the table is what everything in Clay works via a table. So let's say now we hit continue, we have a table that gets created for us. And then there's a question of enrichments. Enrichments are basically like, what do we want to know about these people? So let's ignore that for now. Let's just say we'll continue on our use case. We're trying to find A&R people to like outbound to send out emails to, etc. So you can see like Def Jam, Warner Records, big labels, some small labels. We're starting to get somewhere.
Yeah.
But this is kind of a useless list because if I reach out to the VP of marketing, I don't care. Like their job is not to like sign artists. So now what I want to do is I want to filter it down. So let's see how this table is constructed. And the main source, so like Clay has an internal source, but it usually comes from LinkedIn. There's basically like cached all of LinkedIn and like some other data sources over
Mm.
time. So you can use a data source like this to build your list, and you can kind of edit your inputs, and you can say here like with filters very similar to how you would do in Apollo. You can say like exclude CEO, exclude VP, exclude SVP, whatever, director, um, something like that, and then you can kind of like edit your search from there. This is when you want to do a static outreach. What if you wanted to do a dynamic outreach? So let's say you wanted to say, I want every company that's raised a seed round. As soon as they raise a seed round, I want to be able to reach out to them and be like, I don't know, I'm a product manager and I'm looking for jobs, for
Yeah.
example,
That's a fun use case.
right? So how would I build that? So that's where Sculptor would like really not shine super well. So we'll have to kind of go from scratch. The best way to do this is Clay supports different ways of doing imports. So you can see the imports here. Actually, I'm gonna start with a blank table, and here we're gonna go into sources. Sources are like how do we get data into the system. So you can import from your CRM if you already have a CRM. You can import from CSV. I don't have the fancy account, so I can't do webhook. At Manta, we use it all the time. But something that I love using is an RSS feed. So
Hmm.
like an RSS feed, very simply, is like just alerts around what happens. So let's just say I want an RSS feed, Google Alerts, and you can set that up here. Let's say we want just this. And in the show options, we put it as RSS feed. And now we're just going to plug this feed into Clay. So let's go back to our Clay. RSS feed. And in the table, we'll go in here and we'll select sources, view all sources, RSS feed. You can also monitor job changes. You can monitor a lot of different things. So like now you can see like unlimited interest industries raised a bunch of money, whatever, raised a bunch of money. Now I want to like figure out what these companies are, whether it's a good fit for my ICP. How am I going to do that? And that brings me to enrichments. Any questions here before we get into enrichments? Enrichments at a high level are just basically like finding things about our prospects in real time, so that then we can have something called signals, which we can layer in after, so that we can like monitor different things that change about them. But
Yeah.
we always start with like list building, then we start with enrichments, and then we actually run a campaign. Yeah, so let's get into enrichments. This is where it
Let's do it.
gets really fun. So enrichments, there's a couple different ways. So the first thing we need to do is we need to extract the names and like who the company, what the company is, etc. from this RSS feed item, right? So we have a title, we have a content snippet. So what we'll do, let's just extract the name out of it. So what we can do is take content snippet, or maybe even content. We don't even need content. And extract the company name and the amount raised from it. It actually generates the prompts for you. So that's another cool thing, is like you don't have to do it yourself. Clay will generate the prompt that you need to extract the information.
How do you map the output? Because like seems like what you're getting is like two structured piece of data, right? One is the company name, the other one is I forgot what is it, but how do you map it to like? Do you map it to like a table column, or do you just like store this as like a free text? Like how does that work?
I'll show you in a second.
All right.
So let's just, I mean, we're doing a live build, which means that it moves a little slower than we necessarily wanted to. The cool thing about Clay is that it also manages all of the APIs. So like you can plug in your own APIs if you want to, API keys, but you don't have to. So in this case, let's save and run on 10 rows. And so we're going to go and start to extract. This kind of helps us see. Let's get rid of this row. Delete row. And this kind of helps us see like, okay, these are the things that we got. So let's add this one as a column. Let's add this one as a column.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
Millions. And also let's just, for evidence sake, add this so that we know what happened. Right, so now we know something about these companies. Now, let's say I wanted to, so there's a bunch of duplicates that I need to get rid of. What I'd like to know about these companies is like, I'd like to know what their domain is, like what their URL is. I want to go on the URL. So like if I was doing manual research, like I want to know what Unlimited Industries is all about. Like I would go on their URL, I would kind of look around, I would extract information, I would see if they have any job openings, maybe click on this button,
Right.
right? Like, so like how do I like replicate that now in terms of doing my research automatically? And that's where this gets really, really interesting. So before we do that, let's just copy this stuff over to another table so that we can kind of clean things up. Copy to tables and table data. Create new table. Here's whatever. Let's just call it new table right now. Remove duplicates so that I can get rid of my like RSS feeds. So these are my, let me rename this table, companies. Okay, so now we have a bunch of information about the companies. We can kind of ignore the RSS stuff, and let's just hide this for now. So let's say I want to find out what the company is about. Now I use something called Enrich Company. But before I can enrich company, I would need to find the URL, I think. So let's do that. Domain. Company domain. So this leads us to another cool concept that Clay has, which is called the concept of a waterfall. So let's say we want to find out what the domains of these companies are. There's different ways in which we can find out. We can find out using Google. We can find out using Clearbit. We can find out using HG Insights. There's probably other providers. So you can kind of add whatever provider you want that you use. So like typically there's like a bunch of different data providers. And you can order them so that based on cost or wherever you want to do, so that Clay can kind of decide how they want to structure it. You can also say like only run. So like this is where formulas become super valuable. It's like you can say like I only want to run this enrichment, which is expensive if certain conditions are true. And this is basically like a light version of JavaScript. So let's just try this out. In this case, I'm going to say save and don't run because I don't want to run it for 10 rows. It's kind of expensive. And let me just get rid of some rows to like save me money. It's the demo. It's easier. Okay, so now we found the domain. Now we want to find more information about the company. Maybe
Quick
we
question.
even want to. What's up?
Quick question. How are you like? What's the prompt for getting a domain?
So the domain is actually not a prompt. So this is not AI. This is
Yeah.
like you're literally saying there's a bunch of different providers, and I just want to grab data from one of the providers. So like in this case, we can kind of expand the waterfall, and you can see for the first one, it tried Clearbit, it worked. For the second one, it tried Clearbit, it didn't work, and then so it found the domain from Google.
Finding like the company domain URL.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So there's no prompt here.
Yeah.
The prompt gets interesting. Like we can do a prompt, and we'll see why we want to do something like that.
Yeah.
Just like you did this enrichment, you can actually plug in whatever provider you want. So that's like all kinds of enrichments. You can find out the company's tech stack, et cetera, et cetera. You can also enrich the company. So like you can find data about the company, which is something we use very commonly. And this data comes from LinkedIn. So typically, like it's going to cost me a credit right now, but typically like in a bigger enterprise plan, so something like this would be free. So here we can see what we want to enrich. We can find out what industry they have. We can find out what descriptions they have. And we can find out where the company is, for example, right? All of these things we can just get with 3 credits. So let's see what happened. Okay, company not found. So this is interesting. Sometimes it doesn't work, which is fine. Which means we'd probably need a different way to find information about the company. So we probably need to go on their website and like search how to do this. So let's do that. This is what I wanted to show you. So let's say, so something that we'll do is we'll say like, if we haven't, like if Enrich Company has not worked, then I want to actually go on the website, scroll through and figure out what this company is about. Let's see how we do that. This is my favorite feature of Clay, and it's called Claygent. And we're going to go in here, and we're going to say, go to the company's website and figure out what this company actually does. So now it's figuring out which model it needs to use, how it needs to browse. So there's an expensive way to browse. There's a cheaper way to browse. This is a cheaper way to browse, Clay Argon. There's Clay Navigator, which is like more expensive. You can actually see it like go on the different website and like figure out what it actually did. But even in this case, I think you just won't get the replay. It'll still go on the website. So yeah, so like Navigator will take like browser actions, and this one's doing like basically deep research. Which one do you want me to try right now?
Interesting. So this is actually a pre-built agent from Clay that's able to either do like browser navigation onto like the website that you want to go onto, or just like
Basic web scraping.
interesting.
So now I'm going to say only run if Enrich Company did not work. I'm going to save this, and you can see it's 9 credits, but it's actually going to be 6 credits because it's not going to run for the last one. So we'll see. And some inputs were missing. Let's see what inputs were missing. Aha. So in this case, we are using the website field, which actually comes from the Enrich Company. So of course it's not going to work. So what we can do is we can mark these as optional, but we can also just remove this. Actually, if we just mark these as optional, it'll work. It's not perfect because we'd want eventually to just clean it up and only use it on domain. But for now, it'll do. And so in this case, it's going to pick the domain, and you'll see in a second what it does. Insights into what you want the company to actually do.
Yeah.
Now, what I would do if I was going to run an outbound campaign on this is basically like add another enrichment where I'll enrich people. So I would find out who are the people who actually work at this company, like who find people at the company. And same thing here. We'll use the company domain to figure out who actually works there. This will give us basically people that we can then use to email, and then we'll generate a AI generated email to actually go ahead and email them. So let's try this, see how it works. And like, it's hit or miss. So you have to kind of play around with these prompts. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Live build. Now it's able to kind of identify the different people. So you found one decision maker, blah, blah, blah. You found the contacts of the company. Now, and custom waterfall. Take them and identify 1 or 2 contacts that work at the company where we can email them. Find their emails. Something like this. This is not going to be perfect. So if I was going to do this in like a production setting, I would actually prefer to have like more tighter control, or I would use a different source to find the company contacts and emails for them. But this is like a sort of more hacky solution for now. Once we have these emails, we can actually In this case,
Calling decision makers, and then the next step seems like it's to
actually create an email based on the personalization that we've done from all the research that we've done.
right.
And so that's where we get into campaigns, which is super, super interesting. So what we can do here is actually create a campaign. So for a campaign, you need to have the lead data, and you need to have like build a sequence. This is still searching. Found like for this one, we just found 2 contacts. Basically, what we want to do is we would want to like find their emails. So one thing we can do, which is an enrichment that another enrichment that we do. Basically, the name is contact name, and let's see, social profile URL would be LinkedIn, and company URL would be that also. So let's see what comes up. And once we have their emails, we can actually like send it out to like an email, and we can send it out to like a campaign.
Quick.
So the last thing that I wanted to show you before I need to leave is to be able to create a campaign. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, there we go. So now we can describe the goals of the campaign. Use information about the company to pitch me as the PM for this company. Personalize the campaign. Something like this.
Yeah.
Right. And that would then generate, like, to read the business context, generate the sequence for you. And this would be like a generated email, for example.
Yeah.
That we have now completely AI generated. And you can, add other follow-ups that are also AI generated, and that's how you build out a whole campaign.
Obviously, I think probably like you can also like plug in information about yourself to make it like more personalized.
Exactly.
Take the data from the enrichment like sequence to make it more personalized. Okay, this is super cool, man. Thank you so much for jumping on. Honestly, I think it was like really cool to see. Like I think starting from list building to enrichment to like building a campaign.